Let's go over Blitz CEO Welstra today. It is probably, in my opinion, the strongest deck to come out of D-BT09, just if you count the new decks and also the decks that received support in there. And it's also the card that I am the most angry with right now, because there was a poll on Twitter trying to find the sexiest Vanguard man, and for whatever reason, you disgusting, bootlicking, capitalist-loving clowns voted for Welstra over Barrel Magus, and I will never, ever, ever let you live that down. Unbelievable. Anyways, let's talk about Blitz or whatever. Blitz CEO Welstra has two skills here. When his unit attacks a Vanguard, choose a product from your order zone and operate it, and you use its operability. Then, if you do operate a product, whenever you do, this unit gets 5 cans at the end of the turn. Welstra is a rather simple card on its own, and it's really held up by its other rear guards as well as its orders. The main playstyle for Welstra is that you want to get a bunch of your products, which are just set orders, into your order zone, and then use them, particularly use them in battle in order to get extra rear guards at this point. Originally when Welstra came out, he was not very good. The way that it was structured, you had to jump through several different hoops just to get a basic game plan going. Then, they decided in D-BT09 that was stupid, and instead they gave also the tools to actually be a functioning deck. The main things that I got are the Operate Master Freight Height and the Assault Flight Carrier Lubetzel. These two cards are from D-BT09, and that's what's really made the deck shine now. It can actually function. The main issue with Welstra in the past was that the deck itself revolves around playing this giant battleship, Freischutz Maximum, out, and this card says that it cannot be played, so you cannot play it from your hand. The only way that you had to play it was with the help of some rearguard from set 7, or this order here. But you can only do that after you Persona Road, which is kind of silly, because all this does is allow you to minus 5k from your opponent's Vanguard, then you can counterblast 1, return a rearguard to hand, and play this out as a rearguard with 23k attack and 1 damage, which, you know, is just a normal baseline. And that's why Welstra was so bad for so long, because there was just no way to get your main playmaker out, your main win con. But here we've got Operate Master Freiheit, who just fixes all those problems. 1, he allows you to search out for your Persona Ride. 2, he also allows you to search out for a product. 3, he also says when you do this skill to search, you can just go ahead and play a product from your hand if you have Welstra. So you can go ahead and ignore the whole restriction where this card cannot be played from your hand normally. So you can just go ahead and slap him down. The second card that helped out here is this grade 2 product, which replaces this one, which really did not do much for you. This, now that you have a way to easily get out your maximum and also get it in the order zone easily, this just helps the deck out by providing many utilities. First and foremost, whenever this is played in the order zone, you draw 1 and soul charge 1. You use up a lot of soul in this deck, so this is amazing. Also, if you operate this in main phase, you can look at top 5, call a card with greater or equal less than to your Vanguard. If you operate this in battle, you draw a card. So this just helps Welstra stay afloat, essentially, because it just gives it resources that it can use. The final, I want to say nail in the coffin, but that's not really appropriate, but the final amazing thing that Welstra got is again Freiheit, who has the ability when it attacks, you can Soul Blast 2 to activate a product from your order zone, which gives you a real easy way to use your Freischutz Maximum during battle, which, if I believe I'm correct, before this, the only way to do that was from Welstra's skill. So now you can very easily throw out 2 of these and actually have it out there, as well as do 5 attacks. You also get to use the skill of the Freischutz Max to, for example, if using your Lubetz, you don't have a lot of options, you can just return the thing that you called out from the top 5, such as APG, in order to get it for this attack. and then at the end of the battle or turn, your maximums just go back to the order zone, which leaves your front row rear guards open, which may or may not be a good thing depending on the deck that you're facing. Not to mention that, of course, maximum has other effects, where it also can retire your opponent's rear guard. So this deck can do just about everything. Can get easy access to Persona Ride, easy access to his pieces, it can draw, it can look at top 5 to summon cards, it can then also get 5 attacks and retire, as well as minimizing your opponent's triggers or just making it hard for them to guard. So first things first, I hope you guys don't mind the black here. It's actually just the Persona mat that I usually use. I just wanted to try something different. Sometimes the backgrounds can be a little bit distracting when I use my nice, beautiful playmats, so we're going to try just pure black here, see how that shows up in the videos. If it sucks, I'm sorry. If you miss the mats, let me know. But until then, we'll keep on with this experiment, see how it goes. For the red line, we're going to actually play the Galactic Hero Purely Agno, because I don't really like the starter for Blitz, and I think it's kind of funny that we have this cute baby that was supposed to be a hero, then evolves into this evil capitalist person. Next up, we've got Blitz Programmer Strasser, followed by the Blitz Technology Researcher Uber, and then Blitz CEO Welstra is the ride line that we're going to use, which is pretty standard minus the starter, which of course does not matter. However, you can actually change up what is in your grade 1 and your grade 0 slots, which is kind of funny because probably the only deck that I've seen, at least in like Brankgate maybe, that, you know, you can actually mess around with your ride line a little bit, which is kind of cool. But we'll get into that later on. Blitz Programmer Strasser here. When this unit is rolled upon, search your deck for up to 1 of a grade 1 product, add it into your order zone, and if you search your deck, shuffle. If you put it from your hand, draw a card. Interestingly, this does not have to be written over by the grade 2 Blitz, which is kind of interesting because there is a grade 1 product that is pretty good and actually kind of a good generic staple in some Brankgate decks. So you can very easily just play this to search this out, which is kind of interesting. I originally wanted to see if there was some sort of way that I can not use Welstra or something like that and maybe use this in another deck, but that did not come into fruition. Then we've got Blitz Technology Researcher Uber. This has a skill where act on Vanguard Circle once per turn. You still +1, choose a product from your order zone and operate it. So you use this operate ability. Then when this is rolled upon, you put a product from your order zone into drop, search your deck or hand for up to 1 grade 2 product, put it into your order zone, and if you search your deck, shuffle. If you put it from your hand, draw 1. So this allows you originally to get the grade 2 after you get rid of the grade 1, but we're not actually playing that one anymore. Instead, we're playing the new grade 2 that we got from set 9. So this gives you access to that, and on place you can draw and soul charge 1, and you can also use the skill of it if you go ahead and operate it in battle to get more plussing that same turn. You can also use the skill here of the Uber. If you already happen to have one of the grade 2 products out already, the Lubetzel, you can just use his Soul Blast 1 to activate it in order to get an extra card out on board. So all in all, pretty decent grade 2. I was tempted to use one of the other grade 1s that we'll go over a little bit later, but I do like the ability of this to search out the grade 2, and the fact that I have to put a product from my order zone into drop is a little bit tricky, which is why I've stuck with the grade 1, even though the one that we currently have is not very good, the grade 1 product. Just having it there for free and being able to then get rid of it to get to grade 2 felt more value for me. For the grade 3s, it's rather simple. We've got 3 copies of the Blitzio Welstra in the main deck, and then 3 copies of our Mobile Fortress of Obliteration Freischutz Maximum. I can guarantee you I'm probably saying a lot of these names wrong, which is fine, but we've got ourselves here Freischutz Maximum, who has the continuous ability where you cannot play this card. So you cannot actively play it like you would a set order. It has to be placed in your order zone by some other effect. Then it has an operate ability, so when you use a ability from a rearguard or vanguard that says to operate this order, you get to use this specific skill. So when this is in your order zone and it's operated, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. Then choose one of your opponent's vanguards and they get minus 5k attack until the end of the turn. After that, you can counterblast 1 and return a rearguard to your hand. to call this card as a 23k normal unit with 1 critical to open rearguard. If you called it, put it into the order zone at the end of the turn. So this is your main win con here, is to get out the maximum, get in a big 23k attack, as well as just in general an additional attack, and maybe benefit from returning a rearguard to hand. So if it's something that has an on-place ability, you can use it next turn. Something you want to keep safe, you can use it next turn, or just something you'd rather have in your hand like a PG or a trigger. On top of all of that, it also minuses 5k from your opponent's Vanguard, which means if you play 2 of these in a turn, your opponent has minus 10k. If they don't hit a defensive trigger, they're going to be on 3k if they're on grade 3. If not, they're just going to be on 0, which obviously makes it much harder for them to guard your attacks. Finally, it also has the skill of retiring one of your opponent's rear guards, which allows you to control your opponent's board. This card just does so much, and it is balanced by the fact that you can't play it normally, but thanks to the grade 2 that we talked about, it's not really much of an issue now, is it? Forgot to mention this off the top, I haven't really played this deck as much, but I have played it enough to be able to talk about it, I feel. And in doing so, my list is kind of basic, I guess. I just wanted to get the general gist of the deck to show it off here. But I'll go over some of the other options in the options section. But we got ourselves here 4 copies of Operating Master Freiheit here. We're actually going to be playing 3 copies of Aiding Monster Tekton, 2 copies of the Blitz Accounting Department Head Sword-D, and then 4 copies of the Assault Flight Carrier Lubetzel. So we talked about Operating Master Freiheit here in the beginning. He is one of the chase cards from set 9, to be honest, because he actually has a very generic effect that can be used in a lot of other Rank 8 decks. First, he has a skill, auto on rearguard when his unit is placed on rearguard. If your order zone has a set order, you can counterblast 1, discard a card from your hand, search your deck for up to 1 card with the same card name as your Vanguard, or up to 1 product card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. If you have a Vanguard with Welstra in its card name, choose up to 1 product card from your hand and put it into your order zone. So as mentioned, the second part of that skill allows you to put out your threshold's maximum, put it into your order zone. You can very easily search it out and then immediately play it. This also gives you a Persona Ride. So if you need your Welstra Persona Rides and you're good in your order zone, you have the products that you need, you can get a Persona Ride for next turn. This is also very useful in other decks because you can use it to search out Persona Rides. So in Avantgarda, this is very, very good because you obviously want a Persona Ride every turn for the skill to be able to restand every turn and not have to rely on hit. Then we have the second skill here that can only be used if you have a Vanguard with Welstra in its card name and you're attacking a Vanguard. You Soul Blast 2, choose a product from your order zone and operate it. So this is what you would use to try and get in your 4th attack. You can also use this to hit the Lubetsu, draw a card. But depending on the attack order that you do this in, you can use this to bring out your threshold's maximum. So I'm playing the Aiding Monster Tekton. Unfortunately, I do not have the new Tekton. I will hopefully get the promo alt art Tekton soon. But Tekton has the simple skill here. When this card is discarded from your hand during your turn, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose to put 1 set order from among them, reveal it and put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. One of the things I realized in this deck is I don't like discarding cards, and I have to discard quite a lot, not just for Ride, but also for Freiheit. So this helps me out a lot. It lets you get the products in your deck. If not, it just at least alleviates the possibility of you discarding for no reason, right? So it kind of has the chance to give you something back. But primarily the reason I'm playing this is because I didn't know what to put in this 3-card slot. And there is a card that will be coming out, which is unfortunately yet another promo that this 3-card slot, maybe 4-card slot will take up. But we'll talk about that later. But for now, we added in a Tekton just for some consistency, which is basically the premise of this entire deck. The way I have it built is just trying to do what it needs to do as consistently as possible. And the last unit we have here, at least in the grade 2 slots, is the Blitz Accounting Department Head Sword-D. This has a simple skill here where if you operate your mobile Fortress of Obliteration threshold's maximum, if you do not countercharge this turn, you can Soul Blast 1 and countercharge 1. So this just makes the cost of the thresholds free, or rather changes it to Soul Blast 1. which is pretty decent because this deck kind of uses a lot of Counterblast. The last grade 2 here is the Assault Flight Carrier Lubetsul. When this is put into your order zone, if you have a Vanguard with Blitz in its card name, draw a card, so charge 1. Then, this has the Operate ability, where when this card is operated, if it is in your main phase, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 unit card from among them with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard and call it to Rearguard Circle. Shuffle your deck. If it's during battle, you don't do that, and instead you draw a card. So, this card is just amazing for giving you the consistency that you need. It lets you draw cards as well as fill up your soul for your Freischutz, or I should say your Freiheits skill to activate a product or operate a product in battle. You also get the ability to call something from these top 5, which allows you to then use its on-place ability if you get something again like the Freiheit. So that just gives you that consistency to make sure you can see that, and then in turn allow you to get your Freischutz as well. Also, just drawing cards in battle is nice, especially when you don't maybe want to operate your maximum just yet. You can operate this to draw a card. Then for the grade 1s, we've got ourselves 4 copies of Detonation Monster Boboline, 2 copies of the Blitz Mechanic Iskra, 1 copy of the Incandescent Flame Cannon Absol, and 4 copies of the Planet Wall Dragon. Detonation Monster Boboline is probably one of the strongest cards to be printed in all of overdress, just in terms of how versatile it is and how useful it is in just about every deck for Brankate, and I'm really happy that this finally got reprinted. So everyone, myself included, can actually have access to this, and not just people that are willing to pay $30 or something like that per copy. Boboline has the very simple skill of, at the end of the battle, when it boosts, if your order zone has a set order, put this into the soul and you countercharge 1. So it's a card that gives you soul and countercharge as well as letting you boost for a turn, which is obviously very useful, again, mainly for the Freiheit, who uses both counterblast and soul in a single turn. Speaking of counterblast, another thing that Boboline is good for is letting us use Blitz Mechanic Ilskra here, who has the skill that says if you did not operate a product this turn, you can counterblast 1 rest, choose a product from your order zone, and operate it. So, thankfully, you can actually use this whenever. You can use this turn 1 if you somehow had counterblast. You can use this turn 2 and use it to activate your Lebosol if you manage to get 1 in hand, to look at top 5 and search out for a Freiheit if you don't have 1 in hand or anything else of use. You can also use this if you really just don't have anything to call out your Freischutz maximum and return her to hand. And you obviously won't be able to play her again because you have to have not activated a product this turn, but as long as you use her first, you can go ahead and then use Welstra and Freiheit to activate your products. Just make sure you use her first, which is fine because this is during main phase, so we're not losing out on anything. Also, since it's an act ability, you can actually throw her out early and try and get some early aggression. This deck does not really do much in the early stages of the game, so being able to have a grade 1, and that's somewhat extendable, and that has an act skill not on place is very, very useful. Incandescent Flame Cannon as a whole is a not very good card, to be honest. It just has the skill that when it's operated, you choose one of your opponent's front row rear guards, retire it. If you did not retire it, draw and discard a card from your hand. This will eventually get replaced with the promo product order that does a lot more for this deck. Right now, we really just use this in the off chance we need to retire or draw a card, mainly just so that we can use the skill of Uber to discard this, or rather put this from order zone to drop to get a grade 2 product. Planet Wall Dragon here is our Sentinel, or as many people call it, the PG, which is short for Perfect Guard. This one has a skill that says when this unit is placed on Guardian Circle, choose one of your units, and it cannot be hit until the end of the battle. If your hand has 2 or more cards, you have to choose a card from your hand and discard it. But if you have 1 or less cards, you don't have to choose a card from your hand to discard it. So this can be a 1-card PG if you guard appropriately or just don't have that many cards in hand when you need to use it. As mentioned, you can search this out with the Lebetsu and just return it to hand, which is really nice because you can just use this with a Boba Mine, for example, to actually swing into your opponent's Vanguard, and then use the Ball Mine to go into Soul Encounter Charge. And that'll easily pay the cost for you returning this to your hand, giving you a PG for your next turn. For the triggers, we have here 4 copies of the Patrol Robo Decro Cup. You don't actually have to play this specifically. I just played it because aesthetically it kind of fits in with the deck, with the Welstra being this big capitalist CEO. He has the police to back him up, so it's just like in IRL. We're going to be playing 8 crits here, followed by 3 fronts. I played this with draws, and it was fine, but I feel like the fronts are kind of needed because aside from your maximums, you really don't have a lot of attacking power. So your first couple of swings aren't really much. So on some turns where you don't go into the maximum, you can use this to bump them up. In addition, it gives you the shield value since you are playing a lot of orders and just things you can't really guard with. And finally, it also just makes your maximums swing in for huge numbers. Without a Persona Ride and a front, they're swinging in for 33. With the Persona Ride, they're swinging for the amazing number of 43, unboosted, which is a pretty good number to hit. I'm going to be playing 4 normal heals. Same spiel as I mentioned in the Unica video. I don't really think the effect triggers, the crit or restand ones, are super effective right now. But the new, if your opponent's Vanguard is higher than your Vanguard heal, might be pretty useful to play at maybe 2 copies. I don't know. I haven't tried to use them just yet, so we're just going with the vanilla triggers for now. And then finally, the over trigger. Obaria, I guess it's fine because if you on those turns you have the 2 maximums, you can give 200 million, swing in with 200 millions. But this thing is, without exaggeration, without hyperbole, the strongest card that was ever printed in overdress, maybe even in all of Vanguard. Just for the sheer fact that this can end games just about whenever it's being checked, for the most part. This has the skill that says, of course, it's an over trigger. When it's checked, you give something 100 million power, you draw a card and remove it. But if you check it during your drive check, you have the additional skill of doubling all of the attack and critical of all your front row units at the end of the turn. So what does this mean? Every unit has a base critical of 1. Instead, they will have a base critical of 2. If you gave them a critical trigger, they will go from 2 to 4, so on and so forth. That alone is amazing, but then it also doubles their attack, which makes it almost impossible to guard in some cases. So this card, unfortunately, is a must-have until it is finally done and gone with, and we will never have to see the face of Satan right here on display in our card game. So for the options, we actually do have quite a couple of them. We discussed the Freischutz here, which is the original way that you would get the maximum. So this says when you operate this, you choose one of your opponent's front row rear guards and retire it, and then if you did not retire, your opponent's Vanguard loses by -5k. Also, when you ride a grade 3 from a grade 3, you can put this into drop, search your deck or hand for your Freischutz maximum and put into the order zone. So this is the original way that you can do that. You can still play this if you want a backup way to try and get that order. I don't really see that being that useful. We do have here the Blitz Engineer Holy Folio, which a lot of people still play. I'm not a big fan of this card because he's an 8k grade 2. But he does say on place you can Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, and operate a product from your order zone if you haven't this turn. And if you do operate a product, he gets 5k. But it's if, so it's not when. So he doesn't continuously get the 5k. I would rather use the Ixtra because she is an act, so I can use it whenever I want, not so much on place, even though you can return this to your hand. I also don't like the fact that it is Soul Blast 1 in addition to Counterblast 1, but of course you can actually swing in with this, whereas the Ixtra rests herself, so it's really up to personal preference. I'll bring up the Combine Rusher since you will have enough set orders to trigger this more often than not. I don't think you'll be able to use the skill to bring it back from drop because the Counterblast might be too costly, but it does give you a good attacker, which this deck does not really have at the moment aside from your orders. I've also seen people play the Blitz Secretary, Perfy, who just says you choose a grade 2 or greater set order from your drop on place, put it on the bottom of your deck, and then draw a card. So if, let's say you're playing only 3 of the maximums like I am, and they get into the damage zone, you can use this as sort of like a buffer to get it back, as well as anything else. You also draw a card. I think you'd be better off just playing a 4th maximum. Then finally for the main deck here, you can use this instead of the Tecton. This has a skill when it's discarded, you can Soul Blast one choose one of your units and give them 5k. Soul Blast is a little bit costly, I kind of wish this was just free. It probably might not even see that much play even then, or maybe it would. But this is a promo that got reprinted in set 9, so it should be very easy to get. And you can use this to just power up your rear guards a little bit. For example, you can discard for Freiheit skill and power him up to 15k, so you can actually swing in on boosted if you'd like. And for the ride deck, you can actually play the Cardinal Noid Rutus here, who just has a skill where you play it and you can search out an, what is called, World Order from your deck and add it to your hand, and next turn use it in order to get yourself a Shadow Army token, which is a nice 15k attacker or booster. As I mentioned, this deck doesn't really do a lot in the early stages of the game, and you can use this throughout the majority of the game to actually give you some nice offensive pressure. Of course, you might have some issues with the Uber because you won't have a product in your order zone when you ride if you do not get a Lubetsu just straight from drawing it, or just having it and mulling it from your hand. I've heard that some people, and I've seen some lists that use the Prison Grade 1 and the Prison Order to get a bunch of soul and for the same purpose, just because the Grade 1 product is not very good. Likewise, you can use Eva or Arkwright in that same vein just to get a set order out there and try and get some value out of it that way, though I don't really recommend that as much. You mainly can use the Eva one to sort of play some mind games on your opponent, making them think that you're playing Eva, but that is about it. Then there are two promos that we need to discuss that will replace a couple of the cards that we mentioned today. So for the 8 and Monster Tecton, we have the Versatile Assembler, which at this point in time of me recording this, we don't know when we're actually going to be getting this card. But it is an amazing card that, again, much like Freiheit, will see its place in many Brand Gate decks. This has two skills. When this unit is placed on Rigor Circle, Soul Blast 1, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose the one set order from among them, reveal it, and add it to your hand and shuffle your deck. So it is Tecton, but for a Soul Blast. Instead of discard, it's on place, and instead of looking at 5, it's the 7 cards. Then it also has a skill that when your other unit is placed on Rigor Circle by a card's ability, this unit gets a boost at the end of the turn. So this not only lets you search out your products, but also gives you boost, which means you might be able to have much healthier columns. Not to mention you can constantly bounce this in order to keep searching. So this is definitely going to be something that will need to be played in Welstra because it'll help out the deck quite a lot. Then the Welstra specific promo is the Mobile Kennel Eingarten, which is a grade 1 set order product that has this insane skill of when this card is put into the drop from your hand or order zone during this turn or during your turn, put that card into the order zone order soul, which is just insane. So with Uber, you can put him, with your grade 1, you can search this. When you ride the grade 2, you can put this into drop, or grade 3 I should say, and then just put it right back, or just use it to get soul. You, from my understanding, could use this in any deck and just go ahead and discard it, and it just immediately goes into your soul. So this card is pretty insane. It also has an operate ability that says in your order zone, when this card is operated, you call it as a 10k normal unit with 1 critical. It also has boost, and then at the end of the battle, or rather turn, you put this back into your order zone. So this gives you an additional attacker early on that also protects itself from any kind of removal or anything of the sort during your opponent's turn. It's also 10k boost, so it allows you to do a lot of aggressive plays if you play out a lot of units. So this is going to be an amazing card as well for Welstra. Fucking CEO is eating really good. Must be all that damn money he has. For the Mulligan, it probably goes without saying, but you definitely want to get a Freiheit in your hand, as well as a Lubetzel. If you get these two, you'd be doing just fine. Depending on what you're going up against, you might want to get the Bulbo Mine. You'll probably see it eventually, but also getting the Iskrat is very nice as well because you can use her skill to operate any of your products early. Or if not, later on to use the grade 2 when you get it. And speaking of products, having one of these grade 3s in hand isn't the worst thing in the world, but I would put it back, especially if you have these two, right? Because you can just search it out. But of course, having the safety of it not going into the damage is very nice to have. And of course, if you get Tecton in your hand, that's great. because you can just use it for discard, for ride, and then possibly to search out any of your other products. So ideally, if you can get something like this that looks like your ideal hand, maybe even this, just so you can actually get some aggro, or maybe use this when you play it. So as I mentioned, I haven't played this deck as much as any of the other decks, so in terms of how to actually play against it, I'm going to be talking out of my ass a little bit here, but let's just go for it. Welstra is of course very counter blast heavy in order to enable a lot of its plays, so you can of course use that to your advantage and not give them as much counter blast as they need. Fright Height, if he ever shows up and he's still around on your opponent's turn, or I should say during your turn, he on site needs to go. Similarly, if you have the ways to get rid of the Bulba Mine or the Iskrat that they might use early to rush you with, get rid of them so they can't use them. And of course, just keep an eye out for, of course, if they have the maximums in the order zone, but more importantly, whether or not it's likely that they will use the maximum that turn. In general, at least until we get the promos, the first couple of swings from Welstra are just going to be probably a couple of combos of Fright Height or maybe the other grade 2, so they're not going to be all that threatening. They're probably going to need boosters, which is why these guys need to go on site if your opponent plays them out. But just keep in mind that Welstra can for free bring out the Fright Height, or sorry, the Fresh Schultz, but they still need a counterblast in order to actually play it. So just keep that in mind, and just keep in mind all of the resources that your opponent has. If they don't have the Soul, they can't use the Fright Height mid-battle. If they don't have the counterblast, they can't really call this out. They can still use the skill to minus you and retire, but they won't be able to call it out. So you just have to keep those things in mind. Other than that, there's not really too much you can do. The deck will be able to just generate some advantage as the game goes on, but nothing insane compared to some of the other decks like Eva or anything like that. So maybe if you can play the long game, it might not be too bad for you, but the deck can do a little bit of deck things, so it is kind of dangerous to go into the long game like that, but of course they do draw and soul charge a lot, so not all their triggers might be in play. And of course, don't forget, Welstra does get the 5k every time it operates, so if it might swing in with 13 or 18, keep in mind that's going to go up to 23 after it actually attacks. It's ironic, I kind of thought that using the black back would make it easier for my camera to focus on stuff, but apparently it is quite the opposite. But in any case, this has been Welstra. It's a deck that I wanted to go over mainly so that I can learn the deck, to not only play it, but also how to play against it, and felt like it is something that most people might start seeing it, because a lot of people think of this deck very highly, especially because it is allegedly very good in the Chrono Jet matchup, and I feel like we'll start seeing it a lot more than we did before. But as I mentioned, take a look at the other options and stuff, because this is sort of just a basic build, and again, I haven't tested this as much as I did something like Unica. But in any case, till next time, take care of yourself, play Vanguard, and have yourself a damn good one.